ahead.
I'll stand up so everybody can see it. I'd like to welcome you and reconvene the open session, the School District of Amery Board meeting. This is our open meeting of community comments and feedback from you guys on athletics. And so that's what we're dealing with tonight is our athletic facilities. And I think, Sean, you
Yes.
have a statement here for you.
Well, you just did my statement, basically. I have a presentation.
Yeah.
I have a presentation, then after the presentation, those who have feedback are welcome to offer feedback. Really, the only ground rules on feedback is you need to use the mic so we can hear what you're saying. And second, just be a respectful listener so everyone has the opportunity to hear what's being said. The presentation portion, unless there's questions, is gonna take about 15-20 minutes, and then after that, we'll turn it over to all of you. So I'm not sure who's running the big board. Okay,
Right here.
looks like we already got, oh, there you are, okay.
And there's a mic over there for
Yep.
later if anybody wants to talk or have questions or.
Okay. So the presentation we're here to talk about tonight is a proposed improvement to our athletic facilities here in the school district of Amery. There will not be any decisions made here this evening. There will be a lot of proposals. There will be probably generate a lot of questions and hopefully a lot of feedback from all of you. So the facilities here in the school district of Amery, the big question is why? There are a couple of reasons why. The first is the age of the facilities themselves. The football fields this fall 43 years old, 43 years worth of time. That's a lot of ball games, that's a lot of weather. The track, 1980, and then 1998, a rubberized surface, and then 2006, which isn't listed here, we just had this information come in earlier today from George. We did a recoat in 2006 and then a 2018 spray coat as well. Varsity baseball is 1978, upgrades of the grass infield in 2003, and then new outfield fence in 2007. And then the softball field at Jorgensen, there hasn't been anything done by the school district on that facility because it isn't ours. That's owned by the city. That's some 20 plus years old in the making. And if we have questions specifically about that, Connie is here, and she certainly knows more than I do about that. We defer to her. And then the soccer field has moved a variety of locations, and the length of, or the age of that facility depends on the location of games. The field we're presently playing on, that was updated and added irrigation about 10, 12 years ago. We're trying to meet the needs of a lot of kids. We have, and you'll see some numbers a little later on, the middle and high school athletes that play there, but that's also not including all of the youth activities that play there. If you have a kid involved in youth soccer on a Friday or a Saturday, it's a zoo. There's a lot of kids that are involved in that. And then if you include things like youth baseball, youth softball, youth basketball, you had hundreds more. The district debt load is very low. Our debt load in this present school year, we're set to pay $99,000 total on debt load. And we have a $23 million budget. That's 0.5% of our budget is devoted to debt. That's not an exorbitant amount. The district's been financially responsible to put us into that position. We have folks that sit here on the board that were part of those decisions in those years to be financially responsible. Currently, we have the district finances to pay for a facility. We have the option to do this financially. There's no school tax increase with this plan. The dollars that would be spent on athletics would be dollars that are already been levied and already allocated. It just depends on what purpose within our athletic, or in our educational setting we want to spend the money on. If we don't spend it on athletics, it doesn't go back to the taxpayer. It's spent on something else in the district that we would choose to spend it on. And then lastly, Cross Anderson's already here. To bring Cross Anderson back to town isn't free. They're here and they'll be here till the end of 24, summer of 24. So there are a lot of funding opportunities that we can use in order to make this happen. Fund 38, I'll talk more about that in a little bit. We can use budget dollars from this year, from next year, or any year subsequent. And lastly, there is referendum contingency. There's money in the referendum that could be used on building and grounds, such as It's written into the referendum to be able to do new lights at the football field. Each of those light poles with lights is $100,000 a piece. Those are not cheap. So there's money there potentially. We came in under budget across the board on site work, and we're thankful for that. So there's potentially, we'll know there's more in January, February, March, to be able to use some of that for items that would be more athletic related. The district, and I don't want to get into Finance 101, because you'll all be asleep rather soon, but we have a revenue limit, which means the amount of money that we can levy onto taxpayers. That revenue limit is generated in this way. District membership, which is in essence your per pupil, the number of kids you have, times your state aid. The state aid formula gives you X dollars per kid. Then you have some exemptions, and that's your revenue limit authority. The authority means how much you can, within law, levy on your taxpayer. You can't levy more than that. If you want to levy more than that, you got to go to referendum, which we just did. What we're talking about here and now is not a referendum. We're not going to referendum, at least unless these folks say we are, but I'm not going to referendum for this cause because we don't need to. So Fund 38 is what we're talking about. This is existing debt. That's your 99,000 of your 23 million. That's the existing debt that we have that we pay using the money that's in our budget right now. If we want to do something beyond our budget, we have to go to referendum. That's Fund 39 debt. That's asking the taxpayer to go beyond what our budget is. We did that. That's how we're doing the upgrades at the high school, the elementary school, and we also did some upgrades at the middle and intermediate as well. So Fund 39 is above and apart from, beyond. Fund 38 is within the revenue limit. That's the fundamental difference. We're not using Fund 39 for this. Fund 38 is what we're using. So here's our debt profile. This is referendum debt. Again, not in the budget. That's us going to the taxpayer and asking permission to go ahead and raise those dollars. We did that. That's done. The Fund 38 debt are these three items. The first of which is now zero. That's not even debt anymore. That was debt recently. It was paid off here in the spring of 23. So we have debt for the safety and security loan, 43,000 left, and for the land across the street. So we have $280,000 in debt, which will be paid off in the next 5 years. This year, one of those years, and then 4 more years at $55,000 a year. Then our debt's gone. The debt capacity, the law says that you can, as a district, in the school district of Amery, levy up to $141 million. We're not anywhere near there. We're at 41.2. So we're at 29% of our debt load. We're well under that threshold. I can't imagine being a district that owed $141 million. We're not that. We are not at historically low interest rates any longer. It doesn't look like it did in January of 2022. But here's where we are. Here's where we were. We're much lower than what we have been in the last 10, 15, 20 years. What the interest rate would be on any kind of borrowing scenario here, I can't guesstimate what that would be. Could be 3%, could be 5%, could be 7%, I don't know. No one would know until you start engaging in that process. But we are in the lower side rather than the higher side. I know you probably can't see these numbers unless you're sitting up front, so go to page 9 to be able to see it. On page 9, focus on the third column where it says existing Fund 38 debt service. So again, the amount of money that we pay over time, last year on debt we paid $231,000, last budget year, 21, 22. Well, that would be 23, 22, 23. Wow, time flies. So in this year, we're paying 99,000, and then you got 55, 55, 55, 55. That's our debt remaining. So what happens after that debt goes away? What the proposal is to use this same line item, 231, and you drop it in here. It doesn't work out to be exactly 231, because with interest rates, you pay it at different times, but it isn't zero. You'll see these total number of dollars devoted towards athletics. This is not total dollars of increased tax levy on taxpayer. These are dollars that are already in our budget. These are dollars that have already been encumbered by the district by already doing the revenue limit formula. It isn't new dollars, it's reallocating the existing dollars. So if you do that, that frees up $3 million to address athletics. How does that work? You take 231 over 20 years, you pay interest, gets you about 3 million. On the next slide, you'll see it probably in a more user-friendly way. This is 22, 23, where we pay the 232 or 31 or whatever it was. This is the existing budget year, 99, 55, 4 times. This, right here, through 43, 44, is 231. That's how you get your $3 million. Now, the trick is, you're not levying 231 in the existing budget year, because we wouldn't levy these dollars, or we wouldn't borrow these dollars to do these projects until the spring, February, March, April, May. So in this year, you've got 99, the other 132 can be used to add to your fund balance, put in Fund 46, devote towards your athletics projects, whatever you want it to do. And then every year subsequently, you would devote towards your athletics project. That gets you approximately 3 million. Couldn't say for sure exactly how many, because you don't know your interest rate yet. So, I don't want to steal Jeff's thunder. Jeff's the one that organized these numbers. These are our number of folks that are in our athletic programs. There's a lot of kids. And those numbers don't include youth sports. And I'm looking through the crowd and I see a lot of youth sports coaches. And I know if I had you put pen to paper, the number would increase probably by hundreds. I spent the better part of spring into early summer touring the baseball facilities of Northwest Wisconsin. A lot of kids playing baseball, and that was just one level. And again, there's softball, there's basketball, there's hockey. It goes beyond that. We have a lot of kids playing sports. Yet these are numbers of kids that are on our, in my mind, pretty inadequate facilities. And I think they deserve better than what they presently have. The school district is also having FIAD use our facilities. Osceola, our neighbor to the west, they have folks using that facility all day long during the school year when it's possible to do so weather-wise. And they're using that facility because on a turf facility or an upgraded facility, if there's weather, you can get on the field a lot faster than if you have a grass facility. In addition, the athletic facilities are highly used by youth booster sports. So those are the number of kids that are involved. We're gonna have lots of conversation here this evening about turf versus grass. I don't want to hijack this meeting into that conversation at this moment in time, and here's why. I'm not the expert, though I think we have folks in the room that are more knowledgeable about this than I. It's a very worthwhile conversation to have that conversation about should something be grass or should something be turf. That's a conversation I'll leave to however this meeting progresses this evening. But certainly look at the slide if you so choose. It's there in your packet. Everything I'm showing you here is in front of you. So what we did, since we met last as an athletics committee a couple of weeks ago, we created, I think it's 7, A through G, 7 options And the way that we tried to boil this down via Kraus Anderson and LHB's help is put a dollar number, you see it at the top of the page, top of the screen. Then list how it's funded, a $3 million options funded by Fund 38, $3 million. And then it gives you what would occur. What would occur at $3 million? We'd redo the football field. You'd make it a turf surface, and you see the pros and the cons. I'm not big on reading PowerPoint slides to people. You're all capable of looking at that and seeing what the pros and cons are, and I think you can probably gather what some of them are without me even saying them. So that's a first option of $3 million. 3.5, you're adding a soccer field. Now, for those who are not in the know, when you add a soccer field, you change the dimensions of the field because the soccer field is wider. If you make a soccer field wider on the existing football field, it doesn't do anything to bother the lines and the distances on a football field. But what it does do in a landlocked area like we have in football, you gotta move something. Either you move the road in front of the middle school, or you have to move your bleachers, and if you move your bleachers, you're moving your press box. If you're moving your bleachers and your press box, you're moving your tree line. Now, if the truth be told, if you take a walk back there, many of those trees are dead. And if they're not dead, they're on their way to being dead. It's a beautiful part of our facility, but it would be something that would have to be addressed if you're going to add soccer. You can leave soccer right where it is if you want to. When you move on to the $4 million facility, now you're doing football, soccer, track. It's a bit illogical to do football and soccer and not do track, because to do football and soccer, where you have a wider field, you'd have to touch the track anyway. So you would do the track and create a 9-lane track, which is perfectly sufficient for any invitational, regional, sectional. We don't host state. The only time you ever see a 10-lane track, based on the track folks that I know, is at state. And we don't host state, and we're not gonna have to deal with a 10-lane track, and there's no one asking for it. So do a brand new 9-lane track. Again, you're moving your bleachers and you're moving your press box in order to make that happen. When you move on to a $4.5 million field, now we're touching into the area of baseball. We've got a baseball field that's got some issues. The dugouts are pretty substandard, the fence line's simply too far. The fence line on, I believe it's the right field side, is not the greatest. Is it right or left? Left. Left field side's not the greatest. And our furry friends, the Gophers, have taken over the outfield and the infield, frankly. There are a lot of holes out there. And if you don't believe that, you can ask high school athletes that play baseball or ask their coaches. They're there. Ryan shared with me, we actually lost a ball into a hole. It wasn't like Caddyshack where it was gone forever, but it was into a hole, which shouldn't happen when you're trying to field the ball. We have no seating at baseball. If you want seating, you bring in your own or you're parking in your vehicle. And the infield's pretty uneven and the outfield's pretty uneven. So to address that, you have a price tag that increases to do that. When you get to a $5 million facility, you're doing all the things that we talked about previous. Now you're talking about adding some walks and some plazas in order to improve the traffic patterns on campus. The traffic patterns, meaning where do you park? I'll channel Bill Peterson. He dealt with this for 25, 30 years. People will park anywhere where there's not a car parked. That is just reality. And sometimes they'll drive across surfaces that shouldn't be driven across, like the soccer field. That happened 6 or 7 years ago. It's a bit dangerous. I mean, on a Tuesday in May where you've got baseball, track, softball, whatever other activities going on, down that main artery of the district, it's a little sketchy. I choose not to drive it, frankly. I go up by the bus route if possible, because it's pretty sketchy going through there with moving up people. So to add some pavement to address some of those issues. And as part of this, the pavement when you enter the football complexes, there is none. Oh. Okay. My hockey crowd's the starter going on right there. The reality is, when you have poor weather at football, it's a little treacherous coming in and out. You got a lot of rock, mud, and half grass area. So adding some pavement there as well from the entrance to the facility past the concession stand up to the bleachers, that's part of the equation as well. Now, when you get out to the next option, we're on F and G. Now you're talking football, soccer, track, baseball, and here's where you get off script a little bit, turf field. Because if we do a grass field update at baseball, you lose a season. We would be away for the entire 2025, spring of 2025 season. We would do that work in the summer of 24, but you gotta stay off the field. If you don't, it would be destroyed. If you do turf, you wouldn't have that happen. You'd also avoid the gopher problems. I'm not a gopher expert, but from what I understand, the gophers are taking poles because they want stuff that's in the grass. Turf isn't to their liking. It's a very predictable surface as well, you wouldn't have poles. So that's part of the 6.5 option. And then G is just another variation of the 6.5 option where you're adding in softball. Again, the softball field is not the district's, it's the city's. You can't do any improvements to the softball field because it isn't ours to improve. We can't do anything there. And no one's using it besides us. And that's from the city and the folks that know who's there. It was used for slow pitch. Church Lake, it isn't being used anymore. And we're the only ones on. It's a beautiful location, but the field needs some upgrade. Timeline, we will continue to have this conversation here this evening on into the month of September and October. If there was any kind of action, it would likely occur in November. There's a resolution. There's a petition period with the public, for the public to weigh in if they want to. And then if all is well, when you get to the first of the year, basically, then you go ahead and start entering into contracts for the work you decided to do. And you start entering into your borrowing arrangement to go ahead and finance this. Again, you're financing it within your revenue limit, not adding additional tax dollar on the public. Just like we financed the safety and security loan or the land across the street, that's paid for by district dollars, not referendum dollars. So that's the timeline, and then we would begin work by Kraus Anderson's estimation, hopefully May. We get a good spring. We have a spring like we just had, July, but probably not. I mean, May is a reasonable time. Though we would have to truncate a bit of our spring sports season, we wouldn't be hosting track at the end of May. We wouldn't be hosting baseball deep into regional or anything like that. Or softball, we would want to be out of the way so they could get to work and then hit the ground running when we got into the fall. You would potentially have in the fall of 24 a brand new football complex where soccer would be playing under the lights and a brand new track as well. All of that could happen if that's what the district decides to do. So that's the timeline. If you want to see that in a detailed way, again, you have it right there in front of you. Is that it? Oh, look at there, 25 minutes in time. Any questions for me that you can think of now? And I'm gonna make it be on the mic so we can hear what you're saying. But if you have questions, since I'm standing here, I can certainly answer them. If there aren't, then we'll turn it over to you for comments. You can come here and use this mic, or you can use that one. This meeting, the board is allowed to engage with you with your commentary and your questions, because that's what the agenda item says they can. That makes us in compliance via open meetings law. We want your feedback. This is too big a decision to do in isolation. So, questions for me? All right, I'll turn the mic over, or that mic over to anyone that wants to say anything. And the board's gonna have to pass this one to and fro. Be heard. Dale, you're up.
I guess I'll go first. Safe. I coach softball, and I just want to reiterate, I know we've been over this, but we do not have a place to play that is ours. And I feel like the girls deserve it. And the way that our field is laid out right now, is different than the other fields that we play on because ours is a slow pitch field. So when we go to the other towns in the middle border, their infield dirt doesn't go back as far as ours does because it's not as deep because of the bases that the men's league uses. Our outfield fence is the only fence in the middle border that is not a permanent fence. We have a temporary fence that's there, and then if we have a regular spring when the grass actually grows, it gets pretty ugly out there with that fence, and you can't weed whip around it because you're gonna break the fence. There's holes in that fence. Yeah, the condition of Jorgensen needs to be upgraded, for sure, just even as it stands right now. But we just want a place where we can have our own space and be able to do what we want with it. And right now we don't have that. And where we do play is substandard compared to the other places we play in the middle border. And I just want to make sure that that gets said and that you guys hear that. You know, and that's, I know our girls really want that. They talk about it quite a bit. You hear them talking to each other at practice, and they're, you know, saying the things they'd like to have. We don't have an announcer's booth. We don't have music at our games. I think every other place we play in the middle border does. And we don't have any of that. We just kind of have a sterile environment where, you know, we're just kind of doing the best we can, I guess. So we appreciate Jorgensen. Eric Whitecheck's really easy to work with. When I ask him for things, it's, you know, it's pretty easy to do. But if there's a men's league tournament in the middle of the season, in the middle of our season, we have to actually move all of our equipment from the shed somewhere else, just because, you know, you don't know about theft and things like that. We have all of our concessions in there, and now we've got other people going in there using the shed, using the scoreboard, stuff like that. And so that's what softball's facing, and I just would like to point that out and hope that something can be done regarding that. So, I don't know, do you have any questions?
Maybe just a comment. I thought I heard maybe through the grapevine from Eric that the men's league, I think, is no longer in existence.
Well, they didn't play this year. You know,
Jeff,
I mean,
Jeff, maybe you want to comment on it, because you talked to Eric a couple weeks back.
Yeah, so slow pitch softball seems to be kind of a dying sport in this area, not only here in Amery, but in Richmond, River Falls, larger pools of teams in those areas. He's not very confident it will make a return anytime soon. He understands the field does need some upgrades. He's supportive of having conversations with the school. We have engaged in initial conversations with the city just to see if it would be an option. But we don't see, Eric doesn't see he's got a solid pulse on slow pitch softball that it would necessarily make a return. There are 2 fields there. My recommendation would be to preserve one field for like our varsity field if we were to engage in this and move forward. And then keep one field maybe with that deeper fence that you could play a JV baseball field on, or you could play a slow pitch game on in the future, until we know for sure there will be no more slow pitch softball anymore. I don't know for sure about the whole future of slow pitch, but it's kind of on a downward slide at this point. Answer your question?
well, and I should say, I was at the Jorgensen on Sunday nights during June this year. Well, whatever. But after we would get done, like at 6:30, there were church league people that were coming. I think that's who that was. So there was some kind of a church league, probably very informal. I don't really know. But I was there. I'd be cleaning up after my thing, and then there was people coming, and my guess is it was church league because it was Sunday night. I think that's when they played. So just to clear that up, that was taking place. Any other questions for me?
Eric wanted to be here, but he had back surgery on Friday. So he is not physically able to join us.
I'll just say out of the respect of Jorgensen too, I believe Eric has reached out to you about the whole conversation and kind of, you know, what those fields were built for and kind of what the goal is behind that. And so we have everybody on the same page, but very initial conversations, just kind of informing folks that it could be a viable option potentially. Coach Jeremiah Fisk.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. This is a great opportunity. I'm just going to give you some basics here quickly, and then Matt's going to back me up a little bit. For the past 14 plus years, I've had the privilege of coaching baseball here in Amery. I've been fortunate to work with and coach between 150 and 200 kids each year. During this time, I've built a very personal relationship with our baseball fields. I'm extremely familiar with the unique field we have, along with its many shortcomings. Myself, along with other coaches, maintenance staff, volunteers, and players, have put in numerous hours trying to get the field safe, aesthetically pleasing, high-performing, and as game day ready as possible. The fact of the matter is that it's just coming up short, okay, no matter what we do in all of these areas. As Dr. Derfler alluded to earlier, gopher holes, uneven ground in the outfield, 2 to 4 inch lips in front of first and third base, uneven ground on the infield are huge safety concerns. The weeds, the disproportionate grass growth, uneven baselines and holes or gaps in the fence have been the talk of opposing coaches and spectators for years now. The fences are among the longest in the conference, with home plate to backstop being the longest in our conference. The upgrades we have made to the clay pitching mound and home plate are the best aspects of our field, only due to constant care and some expensive tarps that, thanks to Baldwin, who sold them at a discount price because they put a turf baseball field in, they didn't need them anymore. Talking to the other coaches in the conference, Amery is the worst field in the eyes of every single one of them. Somerset, Osceola, Prescott, Altoona, and Ellsworth fields are all taken care of on a daily basis by community volunteers, coaches, etc., who have time and committed time to just working on the baseball field. We simply don't have that here at Amery. Baldwin has turf. St. Croix Central is in the process of totally reconstructing their field. I don't want to put anybody under the bus for this. They've worked their butts off for years. Maintenance staff, we just don't have enough people to keep it safe and high performing. This summer, along with Dr. Derfler and Matt and many other coaches here, I've had the privilege to be on some amazing fields and take our youth to some amazing fields. Every time I visit these fields, I think about Amery Youth Baseball, Amery High School Baseball, and the great opportunity that we have here right now to allow these kids to play on something special, something safe, something aesthetically pleasing, high-performing, and just have a place to call home. I won't get into the turf conversation right now. We'll save that for later, but
Jeremiah, quick question. Could you envision a scenario where we had a softball field where youth baseball could play on it? If you added, would that not be the same dimensions?
it would be the same dimensions, correct? Yes, and a lot of these fields have plugs in different spots, and especially like the turf is just
So if you moved the fence line in a permanent way at Jorgensen, redid the infield and outfield, that could double as a place where softball could play and where Little League baseball could play.
Definitely.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
I'm Matt Humple. I also coach baseball. First, I'll just gonna read the letter that I wrote. Thank you for taking the time to look into our athletic facilities. As a former Amery athlete and current coach, I've been around our fields and stadiums for most of my life. I am sure that all of our coaches, families, and players believe their sport should receive upgrades. Being a baseball coach and family, I have some ideas about improving the baseball experience for all our athletes. I've been back teaching and coaching in Amery for the past 6 years after teaching and coaching at Unity for 11 years. Since coming back to Amery, I've been helping out with our youth baseball program, especially the Little League, which is pre-K through second grade. This year we have 186 kids playing baseball from pre-K through high school. With this number of players, the need for field upgrades is very important if we want to keep our athletes playing baseball. With the number of players in our youth baseball, the need for more and improved fields is imminent. My hope is we can continue to grow the number of players we have with our improved instruction and competition. Right now we have just enough players to have a JV and varsity program. My hope is in a few years we will be getting back to having 3 high school levels and more opportunities for our athletes. 20 years ago, when Amery went from summer to spring baseball, there was a need for a JV field. For one season, we used Soldiers Field. The next year, a JV field was built in the location it is now. Where this field is located, it is impossible to have an infield cutout the correct size or fencing that works well for a high school game. With more teams using the field during the summer season, the field has improved, but there are many aspects about this field that make it tough to work with, especially in the spring. My hope is by improving all facilities, we can find a better location for a JV field, making it baseball ready. When I came to Amery a few years ago, the difference in baseball facilities in Amery compared to the other schools in our conference was mind-blowing. I did think we had a better field than Baldwin, but in the last 2 years, they put in a beautiful turf baseball and football field. A turf baseball field would be a dream scenario for our program. With the cost, I know that may not be an option, but if that is the case, our current field needs some serious upgrades. At this time, there's hardly any storage at the field. Most days, we move our gear from inside the school to the field. Our playing surface is also something to be desired. The infield was seeded 20 years ago and has been tough to maintain. Each day, we use a drag that players pull. Most facilities have a 3-wheel sand rig to use that to help make the field consistent. Our irrigation in the infield has worked well, but the outfield continued to be so dry, it is a haven for our Gopher friends. My hope is that irrigating the outfield would take care of some of this problem. These things with our varsity field are things that most people don't notice. Our fans, parents, opponents do notice that our scoreboard is way out of date, the fencing is subpar for a varsity field, and we literally have seating for about 20 fans. The experience that we are giving our boys and our opponents is truly lacking compared to the other schools in our area. The nice thing about improving our baseball fields is it will have an impact on our softball program as well. As you look at the other schools in our conference, I believe we are the only varsity team that plays on a slow pitch field. With a giant infield cutout, open dugouts, and no real fence, the experience we are giving these girls is embarrassing. By providing these girls with a softball field would hopefully mean more opportunity for the girls to play, but would also provide more access for all teams. A field this size would be perfect for all ages 11U and lower. The Little League fields have worked great for people of my generation, but they are very outdated and need some serious upgrades. By having more fields in our community, I think we are more likely to keep boys and girls playing baseball and softball. Thanks again for taking the time to discuss this for all our athletic needs. My children are 4th generation student athletes of the Amery School District. Obviously, over time, facilities need to change and be upgraded. It is nostalgic for us to be playing on the same fields as our grandparents, but it isn't ideal for competition. I know that all sports are going to want to improve their facility, but I think baseball and softball should be first on the list. As I get older, I've been around the baseball block many times. On a summer night, I really feel being at a ballpark is great for the community. As Yogi Berra said, Little League baseball is a very good thing because it keeps the parents off the streets. If you have any questions or not, but a lot of the same things that, Coach Fisk said, and, some of the same things that Coach Pedersen said too, so, thank you.
Coach Chris Boyd. Hello, thank you for, dealing with my voice. I'm still about a week out from COVID and recovering. I'm going to be speaking about spot soccer. I coach the boys and girls soccer team. I have for the last several years, and I've been an Amery soccer fan for the last 7 or 8. When I first came to Amery in 2012, Amery's soccer field was, I would think, the best in the conference. Pretty hands down, you talk to any coach, they say Amery had the best soccer field. And as others have said, no shade to our maintenance crews, they're working really hard, but it's just tough to maintain a grass field, especially when you can't get people to consistently do that work. If you look around the Middle Border Conference now, Osceola, Baldwin, St. Croix Central, and Altoona all have turf fields to varying degrees of niceness. Baldwin and Altoona are what I would call state-of-the-art. It's us in Somerset at this point, still on grass, and Somerset is working their way to get to turf. We have 24 athletes this fall who just had our first practice. We were unable to use our practice field. It is unusably dangerous. If we're out there for 10, 15 minutes, we start having shin splints. We noticed about a 33-40% decrease in injuries when we switched from practicing on our practice field to our game field. It was just unreal. Included in those 24 athletes this fall are 10 who are new to the soccer team, not all freshmen, but all new to the soccer team. And to have them come in and say, that's our practice field, we can't use that, is quite an experience to have them on their first day. In addition to the Middle Border Conference, we often play at Cumberland, Regis, which also have very nice turf soccer facilities. And I believe Prescott also just installed turf. I don't know if soccer is included in that. I don't believe they have a soccer team, but thought it was worth noting. I know some of the concerns around turf versus grass are injuries. In soccer, the injuries that we mostly see are from things like holes in the ground, gopher holes, a hole where a mower blade caught funny, or somebody slips. Those slips are just as likely on a grass field as they are on a turf field. And if you have turf, it's more reliable. You don't have to, oh, there's a gopher hole here now. Remember, if you're over on that side of the field, watch out for that gopher hole. It's much more consistent on turf. Concussion-wise, the things that I can tell you from my own experience is concussions in soccer happen more from people clashing heads together, not from falling to the ground. So that's not a concern. I do know that I've looked at studies, and as far as I can tell, whichever side of the debate funded the study is the side that the study backs. So if a group that is backing turf funded the concussion study, concussion seems to be safer in terms of concussions. And if the grass people funded it, it seems to be safer to play on grass. Very surprising result. Weather-wise, turf is just going to be more reliable. Grass can be nice right after rain, but you're gonna tear it up, we're gonna rip it up, and then it's gonna be almost unusable for the rest of the season. Turf is going to be much more easy to maintain through Wisconsin weather. As you know, we have girls soccer in the spring. The number of nice days that we have before mid-May are very few and far between. And having a field that is hardy and can stand up to that weather is gonna be really nice if that is something we can make to be a reality. To keep a soccer field that's grass nice for soccer, you need to water it almost constantly. It needs to be cut and cleared almost daily, and then you need to paint it. The painting takes an hour or 2 hours to do, and then 2 to 4 hours to dry. Most of our kids have paint all over their cleats and socks because that's just not possible with the maintenance crew that we have. And that's not me saying they're not working hard or not working hard enough. It's just a fact of their job that they have too much to do. In terms of the experience of the kids, as I said, our practice field is almost unusable. We have to try to preserve the game field, so we move around and we practice in different areas, but when we get to things like full field scrimmages, you can't really only use part of the field for that. Our scoreboard is technically still functional. I think we're on about our 5th battery in the last 4 years. The remote is almost as moody as I am before coffee. It is on its last leg. We are one of 2 fields at which we play regularly that have no lights. We are the only field that Amery Soccer plays at that doesn't have any sound system. We have a small set of stands, but outside of those stands, we are the only soccer field at which we play with no significant crowd seating, either home or away. It is almost completely bring your own seating. All this to say that we can play soccer on the field. The maintenance crew and Jeff Fern and I have worked really hard to try to preserve it and get it back to a standard that we're proud of, but it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. And I think that maintenance work and time could probably be spent better elsewhere. On top of which, I'm not sure what message it sends to our kids that they go to all these other schools and they have a sound system for the national anthem, they have lights, they have actual places for their parents to sit, they don't have to bring their own chairs, and they come to Amery and we're doing our best, but it's just not the same as everybody else. I do have 2 of my senior players, 2 captains here to talk more about their experience playing on what it would mean to them to have that available to them.
I'm Aylin. I'm a senior and I play soccer. Well, playing under the lights allows us to have games later on in the day, giving us time to unwind from a stressful day of school. And it really allows us to focus in on the game itself and not what we did during the school day, or I have to study for this math test, or I did bad on this quiz. And then it's also better on the knees and on the shins, having a turf field over a really dry practice field. And yeah.
Hello, my name is Nick. I'm also captain that plays soccer. I invite you all to look at the condition of our field after the season, especially our goals. It's pretty much just a pit of mud at the end of it, which is kind of sad. Playing under the lights would be amazing as we go to other away games, and it's the experience experience. There's just nothing like it. So our practice field, as Coach Boyd talked about, is pretty bad as it receives no maintenance and it's like running on concrete. You know, a lot of our team gets shin splints and other injuries because of it. Us, the soccer team, and many others would love for you guys to consider putting in some money into us. Thank you, guys.
If anybody had questions, I thought I wanted to pop back up and offer you that chance. I didn't want to hit and run.
I had a question for you. Can anything be done, and this is me thinking just outside of what we're trying to do with the money, or a new facility or a new field, anything be done with the existing state of the practice field? Can you aerate it? Can you do, plug it, something that would help soften it up? Or can you not because of the innovation?
I think you could entertain that idea, but the thing is the dirt that's out there, I think it honestly needs to be re-excavated, black dirt brought in, an irrigation system, and then taken care of from the beginning. The thing is you can't do anything about that dirt that's out there right now. I don't think it's a bad idea to entertain the idea of aeration. Actually talked to a guy in Osceola on Friday, how to 2-foot plugs. We probably should do something out there because it is like concrete.
That's not irrigated right now, right? The practice
No,
field?
it's not irrigated. No.
No, and the way it is right now. The way the practice field is right now, we could get 2 inches of rain and it'll be nice for about an hour, but an hour out in the sun and it's back to concrete. And I can tell you from working in my yard that it's gonna take a lot of work to make that grow grass that's decent to play soccer on. And I'm just talking about 200 square feet, not a whole soccer field.
I think cosmetically, our soccer field looks appealing to the eye like the grass does, but once you actually walk out on there, it's pretty rough. I will say, the best time to plant grass is in the fall or the early spring. Our season gets over at boys soccer usually around October 25th, Halloween-ish. At that point, the snow's starting to fly, so we can't really do any upgrades. In the first day we get on that field in the spring, I would say 90% of the time is the first day on the field that we can play a game. So we have no time to, our option to plant grass is when the girls get done, which is probably mid-June. And you guys know how June was this year. We didn't get any rain in June and we actually fenced some areas off and tried to grow some grass in the goal areas, but, and then, we're talking with our booster programs. They're emailing and we want to work with them, but we're informing them, hey, you guys got to stay off because we're trying to plant grass right now. You can't use the facility. We don't want to have that conversation. I think an ideal situation would be the current game field that we have, the grass field, would be our practice field. It's irrigated. I think we could tolerate that. And then we would have our official game field would be kind of in our track, football, soccer area that we've seen up here for proposals.
Coach.
Questions?
Coach.
Yes.
We'll make this really awkward.
We have a mic.
So last,
That's good.
So we were there for the first one, Shar, when we started talking about sports. And did something change your mind in regards to this turf? Because, I went back after we first met and you were talking about, well, not everyone likes turf, and especially for soccer I spoke with a partner of mine, Isaac Mohammed from Barron, who said it becomes to be a sprint rather than a technical game. And I just want to know what changed your mind.
Thanks, Oprah.
No, that's a fair question because I am on the record as not loving turf for soccer, but the realities of the grass field that we have and how much work it is to maintain, it is unfair of me to ask that much from our maintenance department because almost every day they need to be out there cutting the grass, watering it, seeding it, making sure that it maintains playability. And at that point, that much energy, that much effort, it's just not worth it to the district. In addition to, picking my words carefully, in addition to some of the changes in technology around turf. I've done a lot more reading about some of the things that are more accessible to a high school. I early was under the impression that the high-quality turfs were essentially only accessible to places like Lambeau Field that just installed a hybrid turf and grass mixture, and some of the more higher quality turfs that make soccer more useful on turf, or more playable on turf, are more accessible to a high school budget. So that's part of it, is I informed myself a little bit about what the cost actually was, and realized, oh, that is possible. In addition to some conversations with Mr. Fern and our maintenance department, realizing how much work I was asking of them, that is me putting my preferences of a sport over what is actually best for the district, I think. Your friend is right, soccer can get to be less technical on a turf field. That exists, but the other end of that is we are playing on turf 90% of the time anyway, so we're gonna have to get used to playing that way at least some of the time. And at least with the quality kids we have in Amery, and with the way Coach Donner and I try to coach them, we don't have to play that way. And if other teams want to, that's just going to make it easier for us to beat them, and that's okay with me, quite frankly. But that is a very good point. A lot of people in soccer world are slow to come around to turf. And I think a lot of them need to realize how much of the professional game is played on turf, because it's a lot more than a lot of us think.
Thank you.
Of course, that's a good question.
On the maintenance side, so coming up Monday, we'll be hosting a JV football game. Our maintenance staff will mow the football field, they'll paint the football field. I'm guessing it's probably a 3.5, 4 hour process. And then they'll go over to soccer, they'll try to mow that, they'll try to paint that. The paint will be wet by the time game time is there, but they'll get it done. And they haven't even touched the rest of this campus. You know, we could hire out a lawn care company to mow this whole campus, and they probably have to be here 3 days if they mowed and trimmed everything like they needed to.
Jeff, can you stay there for a second? I was just asking for the mic when I heard the last bit of your comment there, which was gonna be my question, is, has anybody looked at outsourcing, the maintenance or grounds keeping of our fields to get them game ready?
We have not. There are other, I know St. Croix Central does outsource a couple of their game fields to a lawn care company. What I like having access to though is our crews mowing our fields, because sometimes they need to be mowed 2 or 3 times a week, especially after we fertilize them, it's game week, the grass is growing. But we haven't reached out to any lawn care companies to entertain a bid or an option, but I have heard of schools that have done that.
Can you just kind of clarify that for me? So you said that you like having our own staff do it, but we don't want our own staff to do it? Or is it
like
just
the
that they don't get
flexibility.
the in-between, or?
I like the flexibility of our own staff, because if, you know, the weather changes, we can get out there and mow it. When you have lawn care companies, typically they're booked out for their 40-hour week. You know, they can't just not go mow this townhome association because they gotta come back to our facilities. I mean, just like mowing your own yard, if you wanted to mow it before Thursday, but your lawn care company doesn't mow it on Friday, could they come? Yeah, possibly, but there's a chance for, you know, you're just on their schedule. So, yeah. Bill?
Bill Peterson. I spent a few years here at the district, and I was in charge of the maintenance crew, both directing them what to do and also out there doing it myself. There is so much work to do. And the game fields, you have to make sure that initial marking that you do, that you've got it right, because you can't erase paint very well. So I just wanted to reiterate the amount of work that the maintenance crew does put in out here, besides trying to keep the rest of the grounds mowed, weed trimmed, and when I was here, also keep the transportation department going as well. So there is a lot to do, and I know that they try their hardest, and they work in conjunction very well with the coaches the coaches put in many, many hours of their own time trying to get their facilities the way playable, I should say. Thank you.
My name's Amy Colgrove. I'm the regional commissioner for Apple River Soccer Club. A lot of you I know, whether you've coached for our club or Jeff Byrne, you and I have talked many times about the field. We are in debt to Amery School District. We would not have a place to play without your guys' facilities. With that said, they need work. We have seen kids getting hurt, twisted ankles, shin splints, things like that. So I'm all in favor in any way our organization can help this. I'm all on board for that. With that said, obviously the school district's teams, baseball, soccer, football, you guys are number one priority. I just would like to say, what as a club we offer. From spring to spring, we have over 300 youth players participate in our program. That is from 4 years old all the way up until 18. Many of those players will go on to play for just Amery soccer. We house the districts of Clear Lake, Turtle Lake, Deer Park. So if they want to play soccer, they come to Amery. So to keep that sport offered within the school district of Amery, AYSO, Apple River Soccer Clubs, gives that opportunities to those players. I had put together our requirements for field. Roughly, we would need 13 fields to house 300 kids. That is just in the springtime. AYSO, which is the partnering organization that we work with, offers spring and fall. We do not offer fall because the football fields take over our fields for practice. So in looking at option G, this is where I have some questions. Option G, which sounds to be where it's going to hit softball's needs, baseball's needs, football's needs. With that proposal, and if I'm looking at this correctly, so please correct me if I'm wrong, that would eliminate the football practice area. Am I correct in that assumption?
On the screen, you see option G, and I think what you're making reference to is this area right here. That would be a parking lot.
Yes.
Nothing's been decided, but if you put a parking lot there, you're not playing soccer there, obviously.
But this is the only option that gives softball on school district premises, correct?
But I'll be very transparent about how I feel about it. My preference is for us to play softball at Jorgensen Field, but for the district to be able to upgrade to Jorgensen Field. The location is not the issue. We want to be able to play there.
Right.
So if you've got softball over on Jorgensen, that plot of land is still available. I believe, and from a practical sense, if you want to bring that number down, we do this in 2 phases. Parking lots and all of your paved areas become phase 2. You do that in 25, 26, 26, 27, and then it allows you to do football, soccer, track, baseball, softball, and not spend your money on parking lots, but rather on surfaces that kids are using. That would be my thought, to be fully transparent. But if that doesn't occur and this is a parking lot, we have this space. And if you are doing a soccer field, you can play on the soccer field. And if you did east-west on the soccer field rather than north-south, I haven't measured it out, but I bet you get at least 5 or 6 fields there. And then we're also forgetting about, there's a lot of green over here, and there's a lot of green down here. There is a spot to be able to make it happen. Amy and I have actually had conversation. She sent me the proposal she made reference to. Soccer Association is part of this conversation. They might very well service more kids via youth soccer than any sport in the district. So that has to be part of the conversation too. Or that gets farmed out elsewhere, and that means we farm out our student athletes elsewhere, and perhaps they go to school elsewhere. We don't want that. So we're in proposal stage, but soccer does matter as part of that proposal. If you put a parking lot there, which there is a reason to put a parking lot there, that's much more practical for parking for baseball and for softball and for track and for football. We need more parking areas. We need that. But I'm not sure we want to do that at the expense of fields, if the price tag gets too big. Those are my thoughts.
Field football field would still be an option too. Could they play on that as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and we could probably get more than one field. And obviously, if we still had the elementary space, so that was gonna be my next question, is if, let's say G goes through, is the current football field still available?
Yep, the conversation, this slide, I probably didn't do a very good job of referencing it. And this last of the 7 proposals moves your football field here in this corner. And this football field remains. I'll be very transparent again about my concerns about that. They're not financial, because you actually pick up some money by doing it from scratch, as opposed to moving a tree line, moving a press box, moving bleachers. My concern is, does that old football field become the field no one wants to use and becomes a weed forest and was an eyesore, and then eventually you have to tear it out anyway? That would be my concern. Further, I'm concerned about the practicality of having 2 fields. We live in a very principled town that's probably a conservative mindset that might think that's not practical. I'm concerned about that too. Troy, I think you got something to say. Why don't you come up with the mic?
Sorry, can I just one more thing? There's one thing on the regulation side soccer field, WIAA does state tournaments cannot be played on a non-regulation WIAA field. The current field and the proposals that were in the first initial slides, being that they don't meet regulation, you cannot host a WIAA tournament, so playoffs cannot be held in Amery. And from a financial community standpoint, if you're bringing in all these teams from a different district, what gains do you have by making sure that's a regulation field? I did have Chris Boyd confirm that before I spoke to that.
Troy Miller with LHB. Just wanted to add to why we did option G. And the rationale behind why we did option G was that if you were to redo the current stadium, move the bleachers and all of that stuff, not only do you have the expense of all of those items, but you lose the season, and so the potential of playing all of your games away for 1 year. If you build a brand new stadium, now you can continue to use the current facility, build the new one, transfer everything over, which is one really nice option in terms of just keeping everything here in Amery for all years, right? Because otherwise you'll have one group of kids that lose an opportunity to play at home. The second part of it is, that doesn't get mentioned, is it's not about athletics. By putting the stadium right there by the high school and potentially putting turf there, if you think about how short our season is for athletics, think about how short our year is for kids using it for physical education, as well as you've got a really good marching band. Not many communities have a marching band left. So being able to use the turf field for more than just athletics, it also gets used during the school year because snow melts faster on it. When it rains, kids can go out and use it for physical education. So it's just not the benefit of putting it there for athletics. It's the benefit of putting it close to the high school so that it can also be used for band, PE, and a number of other things beyond just athletics.
One of the things that we talked about at the last meeting is where that softball field or that baseball field is, like in the corner, not the varsity field, but would be the new field. That could be used for anything. That could be used for youth softball, that could be used for youth baseball, JV baseball, FIAD. So there's a lot of different uses for that field as well, because on the picture it looks like it'd be a grass infield, but I don't think it would be if we put it in like that.
I had a couple of things to say there with the idea of being able to use the existing fields that we have if we were to construct from scratch new, which I like the idea of doing that and where we're located there. But when we're keeping the existing fields, then the argument of maintenance kind of goes out the window, because we are going to have to maintain those if we are going to continue to use them. And I honestly just don't think that letting it grow up in a wheat field is an option. And I think we also have to consider that we do have a track there that we did spend $500,000 putting in, and I would like to see the community and our kids, our school-age kids, be able to use that. So I think we need to just think about maintenance on that. I'm in favor of moving the facilities, but when we talk about maintenance, we have to keep that in mind, that we are going to have to maintain the existing fields that we have. And especially to Matt's point there, that being able to use those baseball fields for younger kids, they have to be maintained somehow. So whether that be community members, or we talk about having our soccer gal here and the 300 kids that we service, or more potentially, if we can look at getting some parent involvement, community member involvement that was spoken about before, of having community members being involved in that maintenance of the field. And I don't think currently we have that at this point, correct?
I don't think we do.
Hey, Shar, just one quick thing that I wanted to, you said that, $500,000 was spent on the track. And that $500,000, unfortunately, there was a lot of things that were not done well at all. So that's not a good facility.
Correct. And Amanda, I didn't mean to say that.
I just wanted to point that out to other people who might not.
But I don't want to, we've done that 5 years ago, and I don't want to tell the community, if we're gonna rip up a track like that, send a message to the community that we spent $500,000 of your money, barely got 4 years of use out of this, because it was a bungled deal from past administration and how it was constructed. That I don't wanna say that we've literally taken $100,000 of your money each year for the last 5 years, and now we're just gonna rip it up and throw it out the door. That would be irresponsible, I believe, as a board. It would be an irresponsible use of taxpayers' money, and even though it may not be a quality track for our track athletes to run on and to host our tournaments here, I still think that it's worthy enough to have our lower, our FIAD classes out there, our community members to come in and walk on. It gives them a place to come and still be maintained, and still a use of those tax dollars. That was my point there, that it would be irresponsible to rip that track up after we've just put in money in it.
I'm Ryan Humple. I'm representing the football program. Just a couple numbers with how many kids we will probably have playing this year, 3rd grade through 12th grade. There'll be about 50 high school kids, 50 to 55, relatively around 45 middle school athletes, and then there'll be about 100 to 115 3rd grade through 6th grade athletes playing football. One thing I'm an advocate for, obviously, is to get a new stadium. After being on the turf at Cumberland last Friday, being on turf is a lot better than being on grass. The big reason that I think it is anyways is the predictability of the surface. Okay, we had the officials in last Monday night for practice. They came in and ran a clinic, and they were on our field, and one of the guys one of the side judge mentioned, "Oh yeah, the field looks really nice." And one of the guys that was one of the white hats of the referee in the middle, he goes, "Well, obviously you haven't walked through the middle of it yet." You can take steps and your feet kind of turn. I watched Reggie, I helped Reggie paint it last week, and the painter kind of wobbles its whole way across the field. And that's partially because of the crown, and that's partially because I think Shawnee said 43 years it's been in that spot. You cut grass on some for 43 years, it's gonna build up over time. And then if you think about, like at the game field right now, if we were to play tonight, let's say it was week 1 tonight, we wouldn't have a field for week 2 very well. Yeah, we only got about 1 inch of rain, but if we were gonna get more than 1 inch rain at some point, it's gonna destroy the field. We were on it during camp for a few days, and we left some pretty big footholes, and that's just from it being irrigated in the evening after we were on it. So the predictability of the surface is the huge thing, especially at the stadium. And then when we talked about the lighting, we've been to new stadiums now, like Cumberland I've played at, obviously we didn't have lights on there last Friday. Cumberland, Baldwin, Rice Lake, Cameron, Osceola, the lighting is more, it's brighter than what we have. Okay, we have shadows that get casted. If a ball gets too high, you might lose it because it's darkness. Where when you're like on Osceola's field, it's like you're playing at 6 o'clock at night with the sun out. So that the LED lighting would be a major upgrade to the facility, and it's a safety issue. I mean, it would be an upgrade for not only football, but then obviously, soccer's going to be a little better under the LED lighting, and it'll probably immensely help the track when you have late track meets where it's actually like for pole vaulting area. One thing that I think everyone knows as they drive by the existing field is the scoreboard is very, very outdated. I know that's a different topic, but just kind of wanted to make sure we bring that up in this talk of a new stadium. And then not only on game days would it be a major upgrade to the program and to our athletes, it would be a major upgrade to our practice field. Okay, because if we, as we've kind of talked through meetings, if we had a turf game field, which that'd be housing both us and soccer, it would free up the existing soccer game field. Okay, yes, Coach Boyd mentioned how they were on that tonight because they couldn't be on their practice field because it's rock hard. Well, our practice field neighbors the soccer practice field. Today, well, we'll kind of revert back to last week. We had 3 different individuals have to sit out practice and 1 missed a scrimmage on Friday because they stepped in gopher holes and rolled ankles and sprained knees. We flagged them today, and this is just on the practice field and within like 5 yards surrounding the practice field, 84 gopher holes. That's just on the practice field itself. That doesn't get out. I mean, if we went into the soccer practice field, I think I saw 6 as I was kind of turning around just on their edge of the soccer practice field. So that area is obviously pretty bad, which would give us a lot better footing for practice. And I talked with the Cumberland head coach last week. He's a first-year head coach up there, kind of the first time on turf that he's had. And he mentioned how much nicer camp has been on turf, just because he doesn't have to worry about guys going down because they stepped on a rock differently, or they stepped on uneven ground. Which that uneven ground is, in my opinion, is almost just as bad as the gopher problem. Because this summer I was able to run sprinkler on it almost every day for about 8-9 hours a day. And excuse me. In the areas that the sprinkler actually got to, we have less gopher holes. But as soon as you get out of where we were able to water, where the sprinkler was able to reach, we have gopher holes everywhere. So obviously not a great thing.
Do we have a protocol to deal with gopher problems here? Have we addressed gopher holes in the past? What is the protocol there?
From my research with gophers is it would have to be a whole campus wide eradication.
I'm asking, do we have like anything that we do now to mitigate them? George?
We tried trapping them, and we just didn't seem like we were.
So currently we just don't have any way to deal with the gophers. Now, how do we deal with the gopher holes? Like, how often do we flag them, fill them, fix them? How often is that done?
Never.
So 84 gopher holes out of the course of all of these years with the field because they've never been fixed. Is that correct?
Well, honestly, we could go fill those holes in today, and I believe in 6 months, next spring, next June, we'd probably be dealing with the same thing, to be honest with you. I'm not a gopher expert, but I don't imagine that all 84 gopher holes came from this just this year, but
correct.
There's an active group out there that it's not just the football field, the soccer area, and that whole green space. So it's rock hard, it's dry.
Right.
We can get some water on it. We seem to push them out a little bit, like Ryan said, but.
So what would be the plan to mitigate that, the gophers on existing fields that we are keeping that would be used for alternative, like JV practice, like we've talked about using, I mean, we can't just put in this artificial turf field and then let everything that we have just sit and not do anything with it. So is there a plan to do anything with that?
I feel like we have limited funds to build. I mean, we can't address every item. I think that's an item we want to address. I'm not sure if it's a tier 1 item, but I mean, I'd like to address it at some point. In terms of what has worked, I think water has worked. I mean, if you put in irrigation on these practice fields, I think that helps. Coach Boyd, I don't know if you guys have, he snuck out. I don't know if they have a ton of gopher hole issues on the soccer field that is irrigated.
I think you mentioned that there was some out there, yeah.
Yeah, and then the infield and outfield at the baseball field, since we irrigate the infield, we don't irrigate the outfield. There's gopher holes in the outfield, so. I mean, we've talked in meetings about any athletic area or that our fight is, if it could be irrigated, that would be super helpful. Especially with our current topsoil situation and our gopher situation.
Right, I'm just trying to, this is a conversation, a feedback situation here, and I'm just trying to kind of get a feel of what we would do once if we decided to do a new stadium complex that just like Sean said, that things don't just turn into a weed field. I'm asking what our current state is and how did it get this way, and then what can we do to move forward to keep it better and to make all of our existing facilities usable.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I think with some of this, it just needs to be re-excavated, and dirt brought in and reseeded, but then when you do that, it's always a tough conversation because then somebody's missing a season or we don't have a location to practice. Whenever we reseed, I think Troy mentioned it, I mean, we're off that facility for at least a year. So.
Right, and I understand that and I appreciate that. I just think that sometimes that as a board, we have to make decisions and sometimes we're gonna have to inconvenience people or seasons in order to preserve future seasons or to be able to preserve what we have. So I hope we stay mindful of that as well. I mean, I hope we can mitigate that, but I think sometimes we're gonna have to make those sacrifices.
Right, and I think now the conversations we've had with some of the coaches in the programs is kind of the game fields has kind of been our focal point. But definitely those other areas need to be addressed as well. I agree.
I have a question. You win with the whys. We need to do something. And let me smash your dreams with the hows and the money. All right? This is really what I want to come down to. Option G. 23-24 budget. I understand how we get Fund 38. And the other thing, Connie, is, I guess the thing is where do we start? For Jorgensen Field, and to go this path of having our kids play there for forever. And that I think can help us out with a little bit of planning. But then I understand Fund 38, 3 million, 23-24, finding $1 million in budget, 24-25, finding $1 million in budget. And then LHB, Troy, are you doing that awesome where we're gonna have $1.5 million in contingency?
I don't know, we're sitting really good, so it comes down to.
I can answer your question.
The answer to the 23, 24, 24, 25 is the money is there. You can do anything you want, but what don't you do? Where the money comes from is the 2017 referendum. That money is 1.9 million reoccurring every year. And there are 4 pieces to that puzzle. We created the 4 pieces. The district did. The referendum made available 1.9. You could spend all 1.9 million of that on curriculum if you wanted to. You could spend all 1.9 million of that on technology. You could spend 1.9 million of that on building and grounds if you want to. The hope is, now that we've addressed heat pumps, cooling towers, all the #1 issues at the high school, and there are too many to list here and now, we've taken care of the tier 1s, all of the priority ones on the list. So you won't have any other $800,000 price tags happen along. So you could take 1 million of the 1.9 and devote it towards athletic complex for this present school year and the next school year. And that would be 3 million for Fund 38, 2 million from your budget over 2 years. Now, what happens in regards to referendum contingency? We can't answer that here now in August. According to John Hunick from Cross Anderson, we would have a much better guesstimate on that in January, February. The reason it's a guesstimate is you can't know until the final bill is paid, so to speak. Could it be done? Yes. Do you know for certain? No, you don't. Not right now, you don't. Because we don't know what that is gonna look like until January, February, March.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that this is gonna pick me up, so you can hold on to that. So if you're looking at the 23-24 budget of the 1 million and the 24-25 of the 1 million, I'm assuming 750,000 of that is gonna come from the building and grounds that we have allocated currently.
Right, the 4 pieces of the puzzle, 750,000 is
So
part of
where
that.
do we scrounge up the other 250,000 for each year? What does that come out of, and is there recommendations for that?
Technology and staffing. In technology, because our device rotation, we're paying for through the budget as a line item. We have approximately 200 to 400,000 in technology. The earmarked number for that is bigger in those pieces of the puzzle. And the reason that we're able to do that is because device prices are coming down because we're choosing a different device. We were doing laptops, now we're doing Chromebooks. The difference in price there is $900 per device versus $300 per device. So that's where it would come from. It would also come from staffing. Truth be told, we're a declining enrollment district. We'll need less staff. We already have cut this year. We're going to be cutting again next year. We're going to be cutting again the year after. So there's less money being spent on staff.
Through attrition.
Through attrition, yes.
So I understand less staff, however, does that address the less staff as because of fewer kids in attrition, I understand that, but does that then address that we could have funds that would free up funds for special services? I mean, I don't wanna be making a decision here about these kind of things at the cost of education or quality of education or staffing issues that need to be addressed with the amount of behaviors that we see with kids, special needs with kids that are coming into the district that we long wonder what we're gonna do with and how we're gonna handle that.
Your point's well taken. I'll say the same thing. You can do anything you want with 1.9, so what don't you do? If you're gonna spend less money on pupil services where more staff is needed, that's gonna create a problem. Right now, we're on an upsurge of kids that have needs. We're on a downward trajectory in regards to enrollment. Our number of kids that need help is increasing and the severity of that kid is increasing. Do we presently have the staff we need to shoulder the load? Yes. But is it that we have extra folks laying around? No. And that need's gonna continue to balloon through the district as there are COVID kids and COVID behaviors. Because right now the elementary has been under siege for the last 2 years. The intermediate school probably less so because we'll mitigate some of those things. Yeah, we're gonna need to continue to spend money on staff, that is true. Can we do $1 million this budget year and next budget year? I contend we could. Will we have $1.5 million in referendum contingency? I can't answer that question right now. Are we under budget? Yes, we are. And we're under budget because thanks to LHB and Kraus Anderson, we were conservative in our estimates, and we will have some contingency there to be able to spend on athletics, yes. Unfortunately, we're in a position right now, some things we just don't know yet. We just don't.
So just with regard to the contingency, we've uncovered a lot of stuff at the high school. So it's, as I sit here and look at Gary, it's easy for me to say sitting back in the office and stuff on the job site, but we've uncovered a lot of the messes at the high school, which hopefully have been identified and say, okay, the worst of that in terms of unexpecteds is behind us. The elementary school is much smaller. I think it's a much simpler, more straightforward challenge. So, I do feel good about the contingency. A good part of what we've been spending the contingency on is to make improvements on what's already been done. And a good example of that is the bathrooms around the commons area. We didn't think we had money to put flush valves on each and every fixture. And working with George, we looked at it and said, we gotta fix that and do it right. And so we went in and tore the wall down above the urinals and we did individual flush valves. And so we've been working hard to make sure that because we've got the money, let's make sure we're doing every single piece of it right. And so much of the contingency that you've seen being drawn down is either because of that or things that George has been adding that are continuing to be on his list. So I feel pretty good about the contingency, and if it's $1.5 million, we just make decisions based on, setting that amount of money aside for the project. The other thing about the options are, when we were doing the options, they're meant to be building blocks, right? So if you look at option G, there's no reason why, if we say the track around the existing field is good enough for right now, that we don't have to do the track around the new stadium. We could just build the the football and soccer turf complex, leave the track where it is, and that's about a $750,000 swing in the budget. So, you know, when you start looking at those things, keep in mind, when you start making decisions as a board, it comes down to what is it that you feel you can afford to do at this point, whether it's softball, track. I mean, the needs are well beyond probably the dollars that you have to spend. And so, you know, unfortunately, as a board, you're tasked with the great opportunity to decide how best those dollars will be used. So each of the options are kind of developed so that they're building blocks. And you could say, just as Sean said earlier, the parking lot is phase 2, or the track around the stadium is phase 2. We'll continue to use the old one until it's used up, and then we'll do a new one where it's shown, and we'll make sure we leave space for it in the future. So those are things that you can continue to banter back and forth and talk about, but you know that those are the choices that you have, and you're not looking at a option. It's just options are meant to show what the possibilities are.
Troy, I'm glad you said that, because it actually led right into my question that I had for you, as long as you were there, that none of these options still have anything other than artificial turf for the football field. But we did talk last month about what the cost difference would be if we went with a grass field. And we were looking at about $1 million difference. And then, so I think I saw Amanda kind of like grimace as you said, leave the track there. For if we chose, and my question was, we're not gonna debate the grass versus turf situation, but my question was, if the board decided to go with grass instead of turf, and we're looking at an option G, it would knock $1 million off of that price. We could still put the track in. It doesn't get any cheaper to do it later. As we all know, if we're gonna do construction, it's, you know, we should probably do it and save the district some dollars doing it at one time. If we knock the $1 million off of that, or if we decided to put in grass instead of turf, how does that affect the rest of that option or the rest of the fields?
So if you were to do grass instead of turf on the infield, basically what you're making a decision on is maintenance and playability in terms of you know, we do sand fields. We did sand fields in North St. Paul when they just redid their soccer fields. They did grass instead of turf, but they also hired a company to come in and maintain those fields, fertilizer, the whole 9 yards in terms of maintenance. So when you look at some of those options, you know, you can, just like if you do the track now, do you do turf now, do you do grass now? Those are all options that you as a board can make a decision on. You don't have to do one or the other. And, you know, I think the turf versus the grass is about $750.
I mean, it all depends on the
type too.
The grass,
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it on the cheap or you can do it on the expensive, you know, there's.
I guess my concern with the turf, even, I think we've all heard me talk about injuries and the things that I've looked at about those things. But also is the life expectancy of the turf versus life expectancy of the grass. This is a 20-year loan that we're looking at. We're looking at probably putting in, for this price, middle of the road turf that's probably gonna last 15 years maybe as a life expectancy. And then I get concerned that if we're on a 20-year loan, we're not paid off for the turf, and we would have to look at putting it in again. And I also just wanna say that I know that what we're talking about is the existing fields that we have, and I can appreciate how bad that those fields are and how little they've been probably properly maintained through these years, but I don't want us to get wrapped up into a thought mindset of it's either turf or what we have. Could you speak to a little bit about what grass would look like versus what we have out there now, and then what would a cost associated be with that? What's the life expectancy of that? And then cost associated with that, if we were to do turf later, how much more would that cost us?
Well, if we could have predicted the inflationary rate, you know, increases that we've seen over the last if we could have anticipated the inflationary rates that we've seen over the last couple of years, I mean, that's really the killer, right? And so, So, we've been running inflation as high as 10% the last couple of years. And so, all of a sudden, if they stay at that rate, it's like, wow, turf is really gonna get expensive fast. But looking at grass, what you give up when you go from turf to grass isn't necessarily the quality of the surface, as long as you're maintaining it, well. It's the time that you get to play on it and use it. So, the challenges you have now, where if it rains, you don't want to go on the grass, even if it's a sand field. So it really comes down to the number of hours you get to play on it. And so when you look at turf, the biggest reason why turf fails is because you're overusing it. And that's a good thing, right? If you're overusing something and you just wear it out, that proves to be a heck of an investment. And so I guess that's the way I would look at it, because you're gonna probably triple the amount of playing time on a turf field versus grass. And so that's the comparison that you should really base it on, is how much more green space you get as a district without buying more land when you do turf versus grass. And so, like I said, we do really nice grass fields. The key is, it's not black dirt, it's sand. Sand makes a much better playable surface. It's the surface that is gonna, probably give you the best root structure, because that's what gives you continuity. And when you have sand, that means you have more fertilizer. And because there isn't the nutrients in the ground. So you want the deep root structure that sand gives. You want the give that sand provides. But for each of those pros, there's also a con. So did I answer your question?
I think so.
All right.
Just on the turf failure. Just on the turf, when you do have to come to a point of replacing the turf, just keep in mind that when you do a turf field, half the price is on the base and the drainage system that goes down, the other half is on the carpet and the infill that goes on. So when, let's say you get year 15, year 20, you do have to replace the carpet. It's half the price, because you're keeping that base, you're keeping that drainage field and all the rock, and you're just replacing the carpet. So it's not the full-on expense as your first time.
What is the base difference between using for the grass versus the turf field? Is there a difference in the base that you lay down?
Yep.
Yeah, there's a big difference in that subsoil. So if you were to go back and, if you did a sand field now and then wanted to go back and do turf, you would be taking out a whole lot of sand and building something up that's much more substantial to support the weight of an artificial surface. The other thing that we do a lot of, just in terms of trying to keep things dry and get them in best playing condition as quickly as we can, is we do use a lot of drain tile. So you use a lot of drain tile to really do a good job of drawing them out. And then what do you do on the other side is you dump a whole lot of water on it because it dries out faster. And so those are also costs. And oftentimes, we'll build large retention cells where we try to collect as much of the stormwater as we possibly can on the site, so we can use that to irrigate the fields to try to keep the costs down. So, that would be something that would be nice to try to accomplish as well, would be to create that stormwater cell that we can tap for water for the fields.
Hi, I'm Luciana. I'm a student athlete at Amery High School. This is more just general. I can't speak for all sports because I only play a couple. But being a student athlete, we usually rotate, go to the same schools a lot. So you're competing against the same people at the same facilities. And I can speak on more team sports. You get pretty excited to go to certain facilities because of how nice they are. And I think as athletes, the vibe going to those games and those competitions are like, the energy's a lot higher. You get more excited. Most of the time you get more fans if they're away and it's a nice facility. So I think across the board for all athletics, it'd be really nice to talk to our friends from other places and have them be like, yeah, we're super excited to come to Amery. We know we have a lot of fans that are gonna come down because, like, as soccer, softball, and baseball said, they'd have more seating. Football and track, we already have seating, but there'd be nicer facilities for people to use and for the athletes to enjoy. So that's just a general statement. And then track is my main sport. So on the track side, getting a new track would be amazing, just because with the way track season is, we spend the first month and a half to month and a half maybe indoors, because when we get springs like we did this year, there's still lots of snow on the ground, so we can't use the track. So being indoor, we already have lots more shin splints, knee problems, ankles, just because it's a different surface and it's a lot of impact on our legs. And with the track we have currently, it's really great and it's better than some of the places that we use, but it's still a very hard surface, so it doesn't do as much good in protecting our legs towards the end of the season, because it's still a lot more impact than a more bouncy, rubbery track is. And then another thing is sometimes it's difficult to do certain practice things because with the current rule changes in track, the exchange zones for relays have just recently been switched, so we do not have updated relay exchange zones. So that can make it difficult and confusing, especially for freshmen and younger athletes coming into the program who don't have much experience with track. And when we have young athletes and boosters that come to the track and are trying to learn through like MVTC and other clubs that we have that are introducing kids to track, it just makes it a little bit more confusing for them. So yeah, that's what I have. If there's any questions.
I'm gonna be really quick. So, the one thing I just wanted to say, it's been fun listening to all the coaches advocate for their sports, because we have a lot of really great coaches here in Amery. I believe that, our school is the heartbeat of our community, and sports just provide so many opportunities for our kids here. So as a parent and as a coach, I've traveled to all of our conference facilities, and it is true, in most of our facilities, we are really behind most of our conference. So I just wanted to say to the board that I hope that you'll consider looking at some of the later options that will help update all of the facilities that will serve all of our athletes.
Hi, my name is Heidi Williamson, and before I share some of the thoughts that I had, I just want to make sure that I've understood correctly, because if I'm operating off of faulty information, that's not helpful. So when I look at it, the options that we had laid out, the $3 million one largely only impacts one sport, which is football. Soccer isn't a regulation field, so I don't count that as being impacted.
Track is up there, I believe, as well.
Nope, not the $3 million, at least not that I'm seeing.
When you move to 3.5, you then end up with soccer. When you move to 4, you end up with soccer, football, and track. 4 is those 3 sports.
So we're really closer to 4.7 or 5 to 5.4 million and we want baseball to get turf, which is my understanding that baseball needs turf so that the Gophers stop.
Well, if you get to 5, you're then addressing soccer, football, track, baseball, and then if you roll Jorgensen into the conversation, you're touching softball. If you're talking turf for baseball, then you're moving towards 5.5, 6, 6.5.
But the Jorgensen doesn't come in with the turf until about 6.5, is that my understanding? So once we get like all of our athletes touched and given the facilities that I'm hearing we need,
You
we're
could
at
do
6.5?
upgrades to Jorgensen Field prior to 6.5. There's a contingency built in for softball upgrades, but again, you can't upgrade something that isn't yours.
Okay.
And again, I'll be fully transparent, I have engaged with the city, and there is no compelling argument that was made to me in regards to their use of that facility. I don't know what that conversation would look like at city council, I've never talked to them, but that'll be a conversation, if the board wants to, that we'll proceed forward with in September and October, to see what their thoughts are. And to see what Jorgensen family's thoughts are, because that matters most.
Absolutely. So when we're looking at these options and we talk about that $3 million can build this facility, that doesn't feel accurate to me, because we have so many phenomenal athletes that don't get covered until we're up in that $5 million marker, right around that. And touch meaning we didn't just kind of glance over at their space, but we really offered them the improvement that they deserve. We've made sure that the fields are safe. We've made sure that they have equal opportunity, that our young ladies are not being pushed out by male leagues because they're young ladies on a field that we don't own, which isn't fair. I am a parent of 2 outdoor athletes, both of whom would benefit directly from these advantages. I fully support athletes, our athletics. I think that the value that they bring to our district, our community, my children, my adopted children that aren't really mine, but I consider them mine. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think everybody that's spoken here today has demonstrated we need to do something. Our fields aren't safe. They aren't up to par. They aren't reflective of the effort and energy and time that our coaches and our athletes are putting in. What I'm here to say is I'm wondering if we need to pause for a moment. I hear all of the timing things, but when I look at our district and I think about the amount of money that we're asking to spend on athletes and athletics, I struggle because I see needs in our district that money could touch. So if we go back to that basic $3 million that really only impacts one sport, $3 million, that's the 232,000, correct? That the debt will leave off, that then gets applied.
It's 232 over 20 years with an interest gets you to 3, approximately 3.
So at $232,000, we have 12 grades that we service if we just go K-12, and that equals $20,000 per grade. $20,000 that we could look at our classroom educators, our para-educators, our mental health facilitators, all of those people and go, what could you do with $20,000? I can think of lots of things that I think we could do, and I'm not saying don't do the sports. I'm saying what happens if instead of doing the sports this year, we commit to doing it in 2 years, and we take that money that would have gone towards starting this payment, and we talk to our classroom educators, and we talk to our buildings, and we see what one-time initiative, what one-time thing we can do. I understand we can't do permanent budgetary things because that reallocates that money, but I would like to make sure that all of our students are getting what they deserve at Amery School District, and not just our athletes who also deserve really wonderful things.
To correct the record, to make sure we
Yes,
all
please.
understand, Fund 38 expires as an option at the end of the calendar year 2024. So if we don't do something prior to that, $3 million is off the table. Then you're doing it all through the budget. If you're gonna do it all through the budget, it isn't gonna happen. We're going to referendum in 5 to 8 years, and it's then gonna be $10, $15, $20 million. And I don't think there's anyone in the room that's gonna be able to make a compelling case to make that happen. I'm not gonna be able to make that happen.
So can I ask, okay.
At the end of 2024, that $3 million option is off the table by law.
Is that assuming that we haven't reallocated those funds? Because that $3 million will be utilized for the next 20 years.
You have to do a resolution prior to the end of 2024 to address athletics, because you're entering into a new borrowing arrangement. To do $20,000 a year to help in the area of people services, there's no borrowing arrangement to do that. You're just allocating the money there. But if you're doing a new borrowing arrangement, you have to do that by the end of 24 by law. So that $3 million would be off the table on January 1st, 2025. That would take us down to option A. That's it.
Heidi, I hear your concerns and I appreciate those comments, and I kind of alluded to that when I talked about where are we gonna take that money from, that $1 million, and that I didn't wanna see that impact our other kids. But I've been a board member for 5 years, and I honestly had kind of took that comment personally, that we're not giving all of our students what they need, because we've made a lot of decisions in just my 5 years on the board, and Dale is 20-something years, and Keith, you're just old, so. But this board has put a lot of time, money, and effort to make sure that every child in this district has been touched, and not just in sports. Now, I didn't agree with that during COVID when this board decided to open our facilities to sports before we did that before we opened our schools to our kids and have them come for education. And I was very vocal about that, and I'll stand to that to this day. So as a board member who has made sure that every child in this district has been touched in some way, through allocating a lot of money and actually just going through a lot of meetings about salary and benefits to make sure that we have the best teachers, the best educators in place that we can afford. I just please caution your comment about every child in the district. It is time now that we passed a referendum to make sure that our facilities were upgraded for educational purposes, and now this is the time that we have to do something to address our athletics, and I think for this board, it's been last on the list.
I would simply contend we could do both. We could do athletics and we can manage the needs of our kids. I believe we can do both.
Is it possible to put together some kind, and I'm not part of the school district, so I apologize, but obviously there's concerns and they should be addressed. If you go with option C, what room does that leave for the school district within personal needs or what things like that? I mean,
We are already allocating $750,000 to building and grounds. In this case, we're allocating $500,000 towards it. So we have $250,000 there available to address those needs. So I contend that we would be able to do both. Do I know what's gonna happen? Do I know that heat pumps are gonna fail or cooling towers are gonna go down? We didn't know that this time either, but hopefully we're addressing most of our, or all of our tier ones. If not, I'm holding Cross Anderson personally liable.
A couple things. Number one, and I think I'll probably speak for the entire group, for everyone that's put in work to figure this stuff out thus far, I'm very appreciative. Like most of you, there's been a lot to be desired for our athletic facilities. I'd like our facilities to match our heart towards athletics. It was mentioned earlier by Mr. P, I believe, about church league, so I can speak for that. Even if church league could meet at Jorgensen Field due to conflicts or whatever, we would be more than happy that the kids are getting more use out of that facility. Whatever it becomes would be better for us. We'll find a place to play. It is very informal, so that I would consider that a non-issue for making decisions of the field. We'll either fit in there or we'll fit in elsewhere. And in regards to athletics and the needs of everybody, if we build it, they will come. I really feel that. Maybe not everybody, maybe not everyone will be participating on the field. I would like to also see some focus shifted towards other things like the marching band, of course, cheerleading, all those other things that involve us and get us together as a community. It's not just about the competition. There's so much more with the whole package. So I want it all, if you haven't figured that out. Even for the sports that I don't like, I want them to have everything that the sports that I do like have.
In my conversation with Connie, looks like you were heading up. The only thing for me that's sort of a non-negotiable in regards to Jorgensen Field, whatever happens at the end of the day, the sign stays Jorgensen Field. That would be my only non-negotiable. Go ahead, Connie.
And speaking for Eric and the two surviving Jorgensen people, that would be our only request, is it remains Jorgensen Fields as it was originally intended. It breaks my heart that it's not being used, and if this is a way where all of the work that Eric and his people and myself put into that, and now it's used, great. There are some things we have to work out as far as some financial things, but I do believe Eric and myself, we are willing to work on that and try to make it work. And as I said before, Eric wanted to be here tonight. If you don't know who Eric is, Eric Whitecheck. We knew him as Whitey, but he had back surgery, so I offered to drive, but he said he just couldn't sit here. So I gave him you go for it, stay healthy. So, if you have any questions, those were our only concerns so far. Now we need to see what the city, comes up with and what they want to do. So,
And I've formally engaged with the city, and from what I'm understanding is they're gonna formally engage on the topic as a city council in September. They simply couldn't do it before we had this conversation.
okay,
So, sort of doing things in order.
well, like, the mayor goes to my church, so I'll find out what that meeting is. Thank you.
I have all the confidence in the world in you, Connie.
Thank you.
I did just want to address a couple of points. Probably about 50% of the districts that I work with, when they do projects with the scale and scope that you folks have undertaken at the high school and elementary school, 50% of the districts don't put in the budget furniture, fixtures, and equipment. They just do the building, and then whatever old stuff they have, that's what goes inside. And I've been working with the district for a long time. And, you know, whether it's been the family and consumer ed area or any other part of the building in the elementary school, middle school, whatever areas of the district I've touched, the staff of George and his team, the administration, the board, has always sought to do it right. You know, it started out, I think the family and consumer ed lab was gonna be $500,000, and it ended up being a whole lot more than that. And it wasn't because of the renovations, it was because of the stuff that's inside the room. And that's the stuff that really makes an impact with the students every day. When we did and set up the referendum for the projects that are under construction right now, you have over $600,000 in furniture, fixtures, and equipment that are going in those spaces, so that not only are the spaces gonna be first class with regard to teaching and learning, the stuff that's in the rooms is gonna be, you know, designed to be there. And so I just wanted to make sure that the district realized that, the board realized that, you know, there is an investment being made beyond bricks and mortar for teaching and learning in the buildings that we're touching under the referendum. And so those dollars are outside of the contingency. They're in the budget, and most of that has already been bid out, so those are hard costs, so we know what those are already, so.
One item that I want to mention, and I don't know if there's any other comments, but you'll certainly have your opportunity if you have comments, is scoreboards. It's only been mentioned here in brief. Jeff, Josh, and I have already engaged in regards to scoreboards. I don't envision a single solitary dollar from the budget being spent on scoreboards. Everybody's doing it in the following way. You're going out and getting sponsors. I believe, and these are the words of the folks that I've already engaged with, just putting it on their radar, they have said, business owners here in Amery on Main Street have said to me, you're not gonna have enough scoreboards and you're not gonna have enough space for all the people that are gonna wanna sponsor. Because a lot of people are gonna wanna weigh in. Our scoreboards, you better get to football when we kick off, because you will not know if it's a 2, 4, a 1, or an 8, because they're light bulbs. No one's using light bulbs anymore. So we would upgrade scoreboards via sponsorship. So that takes some dollars off the table and puts it in the hands of the folks that would be willing to sponsor. And I think we would have a lot of folks interested. It would be a nice community building exercise for us to engage with them to see who would want to help. And I think a lot of people would. Levi, you're up.
Well, I'm Levi Bussey. I'm the boys' head tennis coach. And so really what I wanted to come up here and speak to tonight is the impact on the backside of things. Because obviously you've heard from a lot of these coaches who their facilities are lacking. And it's no doubt that they are. And for many years that was us in tennis. And recently that problem has been remedied for us. And I cannot begin to tell you the impact that upgrading our facility has had. We literally were in the same situation as most of these other sports, where we're essentially the bottom of the conference and nobody wants to come there, and the boys aren't proud to play there, and you have to send people all over the place. And now we truly have the nicest facility in the Middle Border Conference. I have coaches who are coming to me saying, we wish you guys would host the conference tournament every single year because of what you guys have done and the way you've set it up for players and fans and families and coaches. And, you know, obviously at the last meeting, you guys went through and Jeff made the proposal to give, you know, those nice raises to us as coaches, and we appreciate that. But I know that every single coach would give that back up for just a shot at having their facilities improved. And I know that that's not the same amount of money, and I'm not saying that, but my point is this. That has a huge impact on the kids, it has a huge impact on the coaches, it has a huge impact on the families. And I can't begin to explain to you how that has impacted us. But all I can say is this, I've seen what it's done for my program, I've seen what it's done for my boys, and I desperately want to see that happen for every single student athlete that comes through this district. Because we talk about fostering excellence. I think we need to try to do that in all areas. And I think it's a shame that we have to step back and look and say, we're falling way behind in certain areas. And so I see that for my group, and I want that for every single kid.
Nate Magny, you all know me. You know my wife, Kathy, she teaches special ed in high school. She, softball coach, I helped Matt out with the U10 kids this fall. Like Jim from Cross was saying, how our school board doesn't do things the wrong way. We voted to do things the right way with our referendum. Our student athletes aren't used furniture either. Let's give them what they need to excel. And I'm not saying that we need to go play at Lambeau, but we need a lot better than what we have now. As you can tell, I hate public speaking. That's why I wrote you guys that letter. I hope you all read it. I was going to read it again, but I kind of feel like it's more important when you hear somebody's thoughts. And I just want to piggyback on what everybody has said tonight. Like, what we're doing here we're not going to have all our kids be professional athletes. And I don't think that's the goal. I think what our goal should be is to set the table so that they can excel. And you're giving them every possibility to do that within our budget. I mean, we could go out and spend like a lot more money, $100 million to do what other schools have done, but we're not. $5 million. It's not really a lot if you think about the grand scheme of things over a 20-year period of time. I don't think so anyways. I know Shari kind of laughing at me, but.
I'm a farmer. $5 million is a lot of money.
How much? Okay, so how much is a new farm tractor?
Yeah, well, that's why we don't have farm tractors.
Right, but.
I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Right.
That this needs to be done, because I
Yep.
think you can tell that, but $5 million is a lot of money.
Well, it is a lot of money. I agree. But if you think about it, my kids are going to be going to 5th and going to 3rd. They'll be lucky to play high school on a great facility like this. A lot of the kids that spoke tonight aren't going to get to play on this at all. They're doing this because they see the need. I played high school baseball here, football. My son, if we go the Kurt route, is going to play his baseball on the same field that I pitched on. Like Matt said, they'd be nostalgic, but that's kind of a joke. I mean, all right. Well, and so I just want to drive home the point that our student athletes deserve more. They deserve new facilities, just like our students deserve better schools. You guys did a great job with the referendum and all that. So, for my way, we'd be doing the 6-5, and I think that most of the parents that have kids in sports would agree. We just played a tournament. My son, his 10U team, played a tournament in Apple Valley, Minnesota. I think they had like 13 or 14 baseball fields throughout their campus. Not all of them were turf, but the grass that they had there, the Packers could have played football on the grass that they had there. So when you see facilities like that, you come back home and you play on our facilities, it makes you really think, why we're losing population in our school. You guys have talked about that tonight as well, and said, well, our student population is decreasing. Well, maybe this is an avenue that we can regain some of those student athletes. We give them a nice facility. It's not gonna draw everybody into our town, but it's gonna make it not so everybody's like, oh my God, I gotta play at Amery now. You know what I mean? It's I don't know. Anyways, thanks for your time.
Couple of last items, real quick. Remember the 6.5 is an estimate, the 5 is an estimate, 4.5, 4, 3.5, 3, and here's why they're an estimate. Until you enter into contracts for X, Y, and Z work, you don't know exactly how much it's going to be, and further, you don't know interest rates. So when I asked Cross Anderson to put this together, they gave me these as estimates, so treat them as such. It may be 6.3, it may be 6.7, it may be 3.7 versus 3.5, we don't know. And the last anecdote I'll give, Nate and Matt and I traveled Northwest Wisconsin playing baseball, and every single time we played on the road, we knew it was gonna be better than ours. And I had a conversation with the one, the only Pam Humple at baseball at the end of the season, in the field that her grandkids, Matt's son, Nate's son, my son played on, the cemetery field is the same field that not Matt and Ryan played on, but Dave played on 50 years ago. It's time. It's way past time. Any last comments or questions? Go ahead.
So one of the things that I think about this is it has to be done. Something has to be done. And we all recognize that it's gonna cost us money to do it. And these ideas up here, they're malleable, right?
Yes,
We can move things around. And I wish we could touch every piece, every child that we're trying to affect. I hope we can. One of the things that I had conversations with Shar, and early on, a lot of discussion about injuries. I know there was talked about tonight, Chris talked about whoever did the study. It seemed to be that they leaned towards grass or they leaned towards turf. And I have struggled a lot with if injuries are in fact something that turf enhances. And one of the studies I read was 3 injuries for every 100 plays in football and 4.3 injuries for every 100 plays on turf. So 3 for grass, 4.3 for turf. If that's true, then I feel like I'm being asked to bring turf in because we can get on it sooner, we can play on it longer, and then I know I'm sending 1 additional child for every 100 plays into an injury. And so I'm asking, I've been reading, I've got 11 studies up here right now that I'm reading on turf. And I'm asking if you have more out there that I could read, that we could research. I would love, I don't want to get inundated with all kinds of emails, but I want to know more about it. And Tony sent me some great stuff that I'm going through right now. One of the things that it did bring up was that there are the different levels of turf, right? And the injuries seem to negate a little bit as you get into the better levels of turf. So when we talk about turf right now at a middle of the road, I think that we need to tackle this in phases. First, we need to decide which of the plans or which parts of the plans we really want to tackle, what those look like, and then we need to really do a research on the levels of turf and figure out what we can do to be as safe as possible. And so I recognize that it's a big undertaking. That's where I would like to go, but I recognize it takes the whole board and a group of people to do that.
As Steve said, we had a little conversation about that, and I've read several studies and found the same that Mr. Boyd had found, and it's whoever's sponsoring the study leans more towards that. So the place that I hang my hat on, because of, and I'm just gonna, with football here, is that the NFL Players Association and the NFL itself keeps these stats. And when we're talking about these kind of studies, we need to be careful that we're looking at the different kinds of turf. But in the NFL, all things are pretty much equal. So you're looking at pretty much equal playing surfaces when it comes to the quality of the turf, and you're looking at pretty much equal playing surfaces when it's come to grass. The other thing that I think of is that we look to the NFL when we have adapted our protocol for concussions and our impact testing, that was all adopted from the NFL. How we rehab players, we look to the NFL, we look to the best. And it would just seem absurd to me that we would then discount the data that they have regarding all things equal within the NFL. Again, this isn't the NFL, but it would seem odd to me that we are not paying attention to what's going on there, especially when it comes to concussions and injuries. I realize the types of injuries are different, and I realize, and again, we're looking at athletes that are baseline the same. They're trained the same, they put in the same amount of time, they're equal size against each other, and now we're talking about high school athletics where you could have a freshman lining up against a senior, and that freshman could be $110, and you're lining up against a senior who's 320. So I realize that those injuries are still going to be the same out on a grass field. You could still have those. You're talking to somebody who had a son suffer a catastrophic knee injury on grass, on our own home field. And I understand that that knee injury could have been the same if it was on a turf field. I have questions and concerns. I've been vocal about that, and again, this isn't the time to discuss that, and we'll save it for another day, but that's kind of where Steve and I had talked about, and since it was touched up, I just followed up on it tonight.
Hi, I'm Justin Shu, and I'm a FIAD teacher here and a track coach here. Super excited about the turf fields, or turf field, for FIAD especially. Right now, we cannot use the football field for the whole fall, because they do not want us tearing it up, which not sure how we would with tennis shoes on, but they also are painting it constantly, so we can't be on it. In the spring, it's going to be the only field we can actually use. As they talked about with gopher holes and other things, we use them, but there are quite a few injuries that we end up having in FIAD class as well. So that's going to be a huge plus for our district in just using the facility constantly throughout the day as well as during athletics. My questions are, do we have an idea what we're going to do for storage as well as what we're going to do for bathrooms? Because right now our bathrooms are lacking when we have big meets, as well as football games. Second question is, do we have a plan then for our practice facilities? Because we're still going to have to practice on them. So do we actually have a plan to make those practice fields better?
Well, I'll take the first question and just say it in succinct form. The addition of bathrooms changes the price tags on every single one of these, because there's going to be nothing more expensive probably than that. The plumbing work and electrical work that go into bathrooms is exorbitant at the very least. So yes, we don't have enough bathrooms at football via track, but it's an expense. If we're going to redo a concession stand and increase the number of bathrooms, something else is going to have to come off the list potentially, because that's going to be a huge expense. The second portion, practice facilities. If you're moving soccer onto football, that problem is solved, because your practice facility, by our soccer coach's own wishes, is their present play facility, game facility. I believe as part of a second phase of this is to address our practice facilities for football, particularly. And I think you need to come in and you need to not just regrade what's there or irrigate what's there, you need to bring in a whole new product. And that, I think, if you're doing the first phase of this, I think takes some other stuff off the table. So here is me, again, thinking out loud and being fully transparent with you. My recommendation is to do this over 3 phases. The first phase is to do soccer, football, track, baseball, and in addition to that, engage in conversation with the Jorgensen family in the city in regards to being able to upgrade that facility. And as part of phase 2, you're doing all of your traffic patterns, your parking lots, JV baseball, and softball. And then in phase 3, we start talking about practice facilities. To do all of this at once is a $10, $12 million price tag, and that's a referendum, and that we cannot do. So that would be my short answer, where it could be a much longer answer.
We can use what's there, and we can bring in satellites.
Well, Well, sure, there are two things there. One, you have to be up to code, and if you're gonna make a change, you have to then change and be in compliant with code. And if we're making a change, putting in a new concession stand, remember that was donated dollars, you're gonna have more bathrooms than you presently have, because you have to by law. And if you do that, you're obviously gonna increase your price tag. Is it working? Well, I only use the men's facility, and from my estimation, that line is shorter. But right now, it's what we have, and it is working, but it isn't ideal. Storage, I believe, is part of the upgrade of the football complex. You're enclosing the bleachers and making that then potentially storage underneath the bleachers for football, soccer, and track. Because right now, you don't have any storage. You're bringing it over. So is everybody else. Our storage facilities aren't any good either. Go look at the JV baseball shed. I would defy you to say that that's up to code. It is not good.
And last thing, if we end up doing this, please do it right, and please put a new track in as well. It is definitely serviceable. We take care of it really, really well. We're one of the only places that after a football game, if another opposing team goes and claps hands with their fans, we make them take their cleats off before they go across. I never saw that before. So we definitely take care of it. Yes, it does need to be replaced. As we talked earlier, they didn't do a great job when they resurfaced it. I was actually out there with a razor blade cutting off bubbles out on the track when they did resurface it. But please do it right and put a new one in if you do this.
The outfit that did the track is no longer in business, and that was, 5 years ago. There is a seam that runs between lanes 2 and 3, from, in essence, the 200-meter mark to the finish line. And if you want to see what that looks like firsthand, Lucci will race you 200 meters. She'll jog, you can run fast.
I was wondering if you could expand on your three-phase approach. Money is money, and money has to be spent. So if the issue is you need $15 million to do everything that those three phases are going to talk about, right? At some point, that $15 million has to get spent. It's going to get worse as more time evolves on. Where do you see that additional funding coming from? If the first 6.8, 5, 3, whatever number you guys come up with, is dealt with through the process that you're already describing, a 20-year loan paid back, where is the money for the other two phases coming from so that it's not a pipe dream?
I don't think it's a pipe dream, phase 2 and phase 3. First of all, 15 million, I don't think is the number that we're working with. I think to address everything we're talking about, 1, 2, and 3 phases, I think you're looking at more towards 8 and 10. The first phase would be the 5 to 6 million that we've already articulated here this evening. The second phase and the third phase, you're probably looking at $1 million and $1.5 million, and that would be in the budget years 25, 26, 26, 27. And the only other means by which to do that is to go to referendum, because you're not going to pull $6 million out of a budget any more so than you're going to pull $3 million out of a budget. And I'm not interested in that option because we don't have to do that option. We have the means by which to do this, and now is the time. Because all of the funding options that exist, now is the sweet spot to make it happen. And further, if we're going to do this and do this right, we want to do it when we're in good financial shape. Some folks have said to me, why hasn't this already been done? Because we couldn't. We had debt and other priorities. We have a grand total of some $300,000 in debt in a $23 million budget over the course of 5 years, where we have $23 million. It's less than 0.5%. There is good debt. I see it as not as good debt. I see this as an investment in our student athletes. And we're way overdue. Way overdue. Any other final questions or comments that folks have? Keith.
The old guy, yeah, all right. I want to thank everybody for their input, because it is so important for us, because this is so unique. I've never seen this before, Dale, I don't think you have either, where 5 people that are gonna make this decision, basically. I mean, with the funding avenue that we have, you know, Lisa Boyson from Baird laying it out for us, how we can do this, but it's up to us 5, and I really want us 5 to all be on the same page and do the right thing here. So that's our focus right now, and that's what the feedback we need. I'd love to see it go to referendum, because then the monkey's off our back. Basically, it's up to the taxpayer. It still can be, but I think in Amery, they've always supported us so well as far as the school district, and we've kind of laid this out. We've gone through this multiple times, so in the next month and 2, more information is gonna come out. And maybe some more things will be solidified so that everybody can feel comfortable about the decision the 5 of us are gonna make. But again, I wanna really thank you all for coming, and we'll move ahead and keep watching us. Thank you.
There's a lot of people, I want to thank everybody for coming too. Like Keith said, there's a lot of people here, obviously from the school district, who are coaches and who are employed here and who are the ones that use these facilities all the time. But like Keith said, this is going to really come down to us, and the community this is the taxpayers that are paying for it, not just the taxpayers that have kids that have student athletes, not just the taxpayers that have kids in the district. This is all of our taxpayers, and even though they're not here tonight, I hope that they will watch this either on YouTube or on cable TV. And please feel free that if you didn't make it tonight, that this is ongoing conversations, and please reach out to us by email, phone, carrier pigeon, smoke signals, whatever it takes. But we would really like to hear the community's input in this too. They're the ones paying for this.
I'll just maybe add my comments. I think we have we have an opportunity for $3 million. That's right in our wheelhouse right now. We can make that happen, in my mind, very easily. And not to minimize that $5 million isn't a lot of money, but it's a good investment. So $3 million, I think we can make happen very easily. There's wiggle room to make the other $1 to $2 million work. And I look at sports, you know, it's an area where a lot of our students can really benefit and grow and learn lifelong lessons. I look at, thinking back, a lot of kids that are maybe, you know, C students become B or A students. A lot of kids that might be borderline failing can put an effort in, and they become passing students. They become maybe average grades, but it's benefiting them in the long run. It's, in my mind, a good investment. I would like to see it happen. I think a lot of the people here tonight would as well. And maybe just a last comment, I can say, I know why the fences are so deep in baseball. I think it goes back to Bill Peterson hitting, you know, so many long home runs 40 years ago, but yeah. I had to get that in there, Bill. But thank you.
That's not true.
But no, I would thank everybody for their comments tonight and spending time coming here tonight, so.
The fun doesn't end for some of us. We have a board meeting to do now, so if you want to stay for the board meeting, you certainly can. We're going to be doing that in the actual boardroom. This isn't the end of the conversation. Please keep apprised as to the developments that are occurring, because it's going to happen over the course of the next 3 or 4 months, and we need you to continue to be engaged so we know how you feel and we know what you want. So thank you very much for coming, and we'll see all of you again rather soon.